Hey, Comcovers. Welcome to Iran's fourth frame, sovereignty. So, a little bit about sovereignty. This is the source of power, and there's many layers to this. Sovereignty is in the eyes of the Iranian citizens, where they believe their government is legit and sovereign. It's how the government sees itself. What is the how does the government conduct itself? Um, where does the government get its sovereignty? So sovereignty is all about power, and when we start our Iranian frame on sovereignty, realize that it's a relatively new regime. Remember that this has only been in existence since 1979. And prior to that, you know, it was pretty tumultuous with the Shah, and before that, all the various monarchies, right? Whether it was the Safavid or the Qajars or the Shah and the Pahlavi. Okay, so Iranian nationalism is a big part of Iranian society, and part of that nationalism in the eyes of the government is to create, in the 1979 Constitution, a highly centralized unitary state. So it is not like we see in some of the other countries where there is power delegated to local and state governments. This is a highly centralized unitary state. Power is at the very top. It is divided administratively into provinces, districts, and localities, but again, despite these divisions, power is highly centralized. Iran is subdivided into 31 provinces, each governed from a local center, usually the largest local city, um, which is the capital of that province. But again, even despite all that, it is highly centralized. So the nation, it identifies as Persian, ethnically speaks Farsi. Um, Iran sits on a massive plateau, and very little of the land is actually arable. Uh, so, so it has historically had trouble feeding itself. The state is officially called the Islamic Republic of Iran, and I'll show you right here. These are the 31 republics within Iran, as you can see, um, and regime. It's an interesting regime, as we've already discovered. It's mostly theocratic, but partially democratic. It does have a history of authoritarianism because of the rules of the Shah. But then in 1979, it converted it to a theocracy, a political regime involving religious law and direct rule by clerics. But there are also democratic elements to it, such as the president, which is elected by the people, and the majlis, which are directed by the people, and the assembly of religious experts that are elected by the people. So it's an interesting combination. Okay, so let's look at its road to democratization. So remember, democratization is the ongoing evolution of becoming a truly democratic state. Um, Certainly its own unique form of democracy, but that is all a part of democratization. Iran has struggled with this. It struggled with democratization. But there are, again, some democratic elements, such as the Constitution. It actually has a Constitution. It was written in 1979, and it was put before a national referendum. And as you remember, a referendum is something that the people are allowed to vote yay or nay on something. And in this case, it was yay or nay on the Constitution of 1979. So the Constitution voted out the monarchy and established a theocratic state adopting some democratic tendencies. The supreme leader, according to the Constitution, is the highest imam or the highest cleric, which in 1979 was this guy you see right here. His name is Ayatollah Khomeini. And so, according to the original Constitution, the Ayatollah was actually made from popular, popular demand. But since 1989, the Assembly of Religious Experts, an 88-man assembly of clerics elected by the people, are going to choose the Ayatollah. So The Ayatollah Khomeini, this Shia leader, is going to launch what is known as the Cultural Revolution. And the Cultural Revolution, oops, is going to have similar goals to that of Mao in China. Mao, of course, led his Cultural Revolution to bring back enthusiasm to 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 China, so to reinstitute communism and enthusiasm for communism. But the Ayatollah is basically going to launch a cultural revolution um, in order to in order to purify the country not only of the Shah, the dreaded Shah, but to purify Iran from secularism. Remember, the Ayatollah is a religious leader. So during the Cultural Revolution, universities were cleared of liberals and staff with faculty who supported the new regime. Remember, Mao also did the same thing in turning students against university professors. So the new government did suppress all opposition, including almost all groups in civil society, and many were executed in the name of revolutionary justice. So we do see a lot of that theocratic, autocratic tendency in this alleged democracy. All right. But the Ayatollah then died in 1989 after about 10 years of rule. And so the Assembly of Religious Experts is going to choose this next guy. Unfortunately for you, his name is very similar to the original Ayatollah Khomeini. This one is the Ayatollah Khomeini, and was made Ayatollah in 1989. He's a different type of leader, whereas the original Ayatollah Khomeini was very charismatic. He was well respected as an academic. But this new Ayatollah, Ayatollah Khomeini, he doesn't have that same type of personality, nor does he have the academic credentials that Khomeini had. And as a result, his legitimacy is sometimes questioned by some scholars in Qom, which is kind of like a religious center in Iran. It's kind of like if you think about Vatican City. However, according to Shia law, the Ayatollah has final say in all matters of the state. And a lot of people in recent years, since say the 2000s, we're starting to see some criticism of totalitarianism, what a lot of Iranians believe is more of a totalitarian state. And that's going to usher in a series of protests, including student riots in Tehran in 1999. And so you could see here from some of the student riots, a lot of it was because of oil prices. So, because of all these protests and dissatisfaction with the totalitarianism, oil prices are starting to go down, and as a result, Iran, which is a heavily oil state, is going to start to not have as much money. And so, in 1997, the Iranian people are going to choose a new president. Now, remember, there's no real political parties in Iran, but there are the hardliners and the reformists. So, at the time, there had always just been hardliners, but in 1997, the Iranian people chose a president that was a reformist. He's actually still around in Iranian politics today and is still very much considered a reformist, and his name is Khatami. And so, President Khatami is going to bring about a lot of reform changes in Iran in his presidential term from 1997 to 2005. Part of his aim was to end the frozen relationship the United States had with Iran and Iran's just relationship with the West in general. And uh, so it went well until 9/11. 9/11 is really a turning point in Iranian history, and I'll give you a little bit about that in just a second. But during his reign, Iranians experienced what is known as the Tehran Spring. This is a play off of the Arab Spring that that happened in 2010. This is going to be a precursor to that, so we have then called it Tehran Spring. It's a period of time in which we do see in Iran some political liberalization, loosening up of freedom of speech, freedom of press, a more open economy, friendlier stance towards the West, that kind of thing. So the Tehran Spring really did characterize the Khatami presidency. But what's going to foil the Khatami presidency is 9/11. So, as we all know, Osama bin Laden was the perpetrator behind the 9/11 attacks, in which planes were planes were used to crash into the World Trade Centers in New York City, as well as an attack on the Pentagon and an alleged attack on the Capitol. So, after the 9/11 attacks, of course, the U.S.'s number one priority was to capture Osama bin Laden. Intel information told us that bin Laden was actually hiding out in Afghanistan. And so we went into Afghanistan, as we all know, looking for Osama bin Laden. And Iran, during all of this, cooperated with the U.S. in seeking out Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan. But then, after several months, it appeared that bin Laden may have crossed over into Iran and may have been hiding somewhere within Iran's borders. So the U.S., this is George W., the U.S. demanded that Iran turn over Osama bin Laden. And Khatami said, hey, well, we don't know where he is. If he's in Iran, we'll look for him, but we are under we have no information that he is in Iran. And as a result of that, of what George Bush's administration appeared to be an uncooperating Iran, George W. is going to give his famous axis of evil speech. And in his axis of evil speech, he targeted Iran as one of the axis of evil, and it further delegitimized Khatami in the eyes of the Iranian people. So here's a little excerpt from the famous axis of evil speech given by George W., January 29th, 2002. Quote, some of these regimes have been pretty quiet since September 11th, but we know their true nature. North Korea is a regime arming with missiles and weapons of mass destruction while starving its citizens. Iran aggressively pursues these weapons and exports terror, while an unelected few repress the Iranian people's hope for freedom. Iraq continues to flaunt its hostility towards America and to support terror. States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world. By seeking weapons of mass destruction, these regimes pose a grave and growing danger. They could provide these arms to terrorists, giving them the means to match their hatred. They could attack our allies or attempt to blackmail the United States. In any case, the price of indifference would be catastrophic. And in this speech, I don't know if you can tell the tenor and tone of the speech, George W. is preparing the United States for a war on terror. Right, and on his hit list, of course, was North Korea, Iran, and Iraq. So this is going to delegitimize the Khatami administration, and he's not going to find himself reelected. Instead, the Iranian people went the complete opposite direction in the 2005 election. They went with a hardliner, a very anti-Western hardliner called Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. So, as the Iranian people are shouting death to America, largely because the United States has vilified Iran, despite the fact that they had attempted to help us in 9/11. they're going to put an anti-Westerner, someone who was a part of the 1979 Islamic Revolution, and that is Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. He has asserted theocratic values, although he is not a cleric himself. He does appeal strongly to Iranian nationalism, again, that Iran should not be bullied by the United States. And as far as his popularity, at first, obviously, he was popular, but then Iran is hit with falling oil prices and UN sanctions. And so he's going to face mounting criticism for his handling of the economy. Uh, Also, he's going to, these UN sanctions are largely because of the Iranian nuclear program. So, Iran has always said that they should be allowed to harness nuclear power, largely, for energy. But if they wanted to do a nuclear weapon, why shouldn't they be able to do a nuclear weapon? Because I will say that Iran does definitely want to be the power of the Middle East. Um, and as a result of his hostility towards the West and growing economic hardship and UN sanctions, when he was reelected in 2009, it was kind of illegitimate, because this was the one election in Iran that was contested, that was perhaps not legit. And so there were a lot of protests. Remember, the Green Movement was largely in response to the 2009 election. All right, and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad will continue to be hostile towards the United States during his second term. As a result of all of this anti-Westernism, UN sanctions, and all of this, the Iranian people then elected Rouhani. Rouhani was a cleric and regarded as a religious moderate. He was often backed by a lot of reformers, including Khatami, and was endorsed by a former president who was very much beloved, Rafsanjani, who, because of his reform-mindedness, was barred from running for office. And so he has been, to a large extent, moderate. However, remember that he is subordinate to the Ayatollah, and the Ayatollah Khomeini is very anti-Western. All right, we're going to stop it here. We'll pick up with the next one tomorrow. Stay safe, guys.